Ja, hallo, welkom alliëren. Welkom allemaal bij deze Epen Up Live. Welkom de meesten op de stream, welkom de meesten op stream. And welcome everybody here in the audience. A special message for you there back in your home, in your cozy warm home. This evening will be in English, because we got guests from all over Europe. So if you don't speak English, you're kind of fucked. But maybe you can ask for help for other people in the comments. That's the same for the people in the audience here. If you have trouble understanding the English, please look at somebody who might look like he knows or she knows some English. So maybe they can help translate. And of course, you can ask your questions yourselves if you have any, or if you want to make a statement or say anything. And then Mattea will be there. That's the beautiful lady there in the green. And she has a mic. Show us your mic. Yeah, she has a mic. And when the mic is where you are, then you can talk. And Ek voor de meesten thuis, voor de mensen thuis, for the people who are watching this on the stream. If you have a question, please leave it in the Facebook comments. And then we have some other ladies over there. Marianne, hi Marianne. Hi, and Marianne will be watching the stream. So, and we're a TV program or live program without too much rules. So please don't be afraid to stand up, get a drink. They will come by to ask if you want to drink. No problem at all. But I also want to introduce my co-host. She's, well, because of her work, well known all around the world, especially in the Netherlands. And she has made beautiful, controversial, and art that makes you think. I would like to introduce Tinkerbell. Please give her applause. Yeah, just push the cameraman aside. Okay. Hi. Yeah, there you are. Big step.
Thanks.
That's your mic. Please take a seat. Tinkerbell, thank you very much for coming. You had quite a journey today, didn't you?
Way too long.
Yeah, what time? Where did you come from today?
From Mechelen.
Which is in?
This very south of Limburg.
Yeah.
Yes, took 5 hours by train.
5 hours by train. Well,
but I'm here.
That's quite impressive. But there's people here that came from Lebanon, so they're not really impressed by the amount of time that you had to travel.
I think a flight to Lebanon is 9 hours, and it's not even twice as far.
Yeah.
Like in hours.
Well, we're very happy that you are here, and this night is a night about the Borderline Offensive, which is kind of a movement where there was a congress today here in the city of Leeuwarden. And Borderline Offensive is a movement that wants to use humor, satire in an ever-polarizing world. The world is getting polarized. We are not being helped in that by politicians or the media or journalism. And it's not getting people closer to each other. And tonight, together with you, we'll talk with you about it, because you've been doing work with refugees as well. Very intense, interesting work. But tonight we'll have different people, different artists from different collectives all over Europe who's going to talk to you about how they used humor, satire, or became active against polarization, racism. And Borderline Offensive has its roots in the summer of 2015, when we had the mass exodus from the Middle East to Europe. And that people are using humor or are using art to stand up against racism or stand up for refugees. We have 2 small movies that we're going to show you. And the first one is, maybe you've seen it, this is a very practical joke on some neo-Nazis in Germany.
Wunsiedel in Upper Franconia, a small town with a big problem, a Nazi problem. Because for over 25 years, each year, hundreds of right-wing extremists have been coming here to march through Wunsiedel. The town feels helpless. That's why everything's a little different in 2014, because we've secretly turned this Nazi march into something sensible, Germany's most involuntary walkathon. The idea that every meter the neo-Nazis march, €10 go to an exit program aimed at undermining precisely these neo-Nazis. Exit Deutschland. The further they march, the more money is collected. In other words, with every step they take, the neo-Nazis campaign against neo-Nazis and unwittingly finance more and more defections from the extremist scene. And the best thing is, they only find out when they're already marching. At 1:48 p.m. on the dot, the Nazis Against Nazis campaign officially gets underway. For the first time in history, neo-Nazis are marching against themselves. In keeping with the walkathon, motivational posters and banners encourage the participants to keep going and make sure they don't forget what they're marching for, or rather, against. Markings on the road let the stony-faced participants keep track of how much money they've collected. And thought has been given to the right-wing radicals' fitness too. Bananas are being handed out as sustenance, so that even the most unfit neo-fascists will manage to goose-step their way across the finish line in this donation run. At 3:28 p.m, the neo-fascists have reached their goal. 10,000 euros for the neo-Nazi opt-out initiative, Exit Deutschland. 10,000 euros to help right-wing extremists safely defect from the right-wing extremist scene, personally collected by right-wing extremists. Thank you to all the helpers and sponsors. Thank you to the neo-Nazis for collecting donations. Thank you for the miracle of Wunsiedel. Wunsiedel in Upper Franconia, a small town with a big idea.
Yeah, well, that's a very great practical joke. Another one, artist, well-known, Banksy, has done some art in Calais, in the refugee camp. That's basically still there. And then some journalists from RT.com, the Russian broadcaster or propaganda channel, whatever way you want to look at it, they went to visit, and then something happened as well.
The migrants aren't without their supporters, though. World-famous street artist Banksy created his latest work at the notorious Jungle Camp in the French port of Calais in support of the refugees. However, the migrants themselves, well, they might have taken the message the wrong way, as Polly Boyka discovered.
Guys, you don't own this. I'm a journalist and it's my job.
I have picture for you.
Well, that was the artwork of Banksy that then turned into an opportunity to make some money for people who don't have anything. Tinkerbell, you've been to Calais as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
A little bit before the Banksy artwork.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And you always find issues in society to make work about, to talk about, to draw attention to. So you have a talent basically for finding the sore spot in society and putting your finger on it in your own special way. How do you get so good in finding what is sore in society?
Oh, you just have to sit down and watch. That's all. People are always in a hurry and always in haste and don't look at the situation around them. That's just it. Just take your time, and you'll find errors all around, like really, literally all around. And what I liked about the first film, it's actually a very good example of using a situation against the situation. And I think that's always the best way to do it. When people want to protest, they always, well, no, not always, often try to ignore the real situation and then just protest against something that's almost abstract. Just look at by looking at a different way. And I think you always should use the situation and work with that. So work with whatever is around you, and then you communicate with whatever is going on.
But if there's so many errors, which one do you choose? How do you choose?
I don't really choose. It's more that I do this work for about 20 years now, and I do about 6 projects per year, so it's quite a lot. So whenever there's a little bit space in my head, there's always something coming. So whatever comes first, that's it.
So it's a good old inspiration. Something happened to you, it goes somewhere into your head, and then
Yes,
it
and
falls out.
then I have to work with it. Yeah.
There's a Aha-Erlebnis. Right, okay, we'll talk to some different artists. Please do chip in, ask questions if you want to ask them or have remarks. Same is for the audience. And first of all, I would like to invite Thiago. Thiago Prata, where are you? Right, there are you. Please take a seat. And did you bring your friends from Berlin? Because I'm not sure, are they here?
Yes.
Yes, please let him come here as well. That's one. Welcome. Applause, please. Hi. Jacco, what's your name?
Khaled.
Khaled. Please take a seat, take a mic. Thiago, you work for a Swedish collective, if I can say it like this. Is that right? Tilt?
An organization.
Organization, yeah. We have a small movie in which you explain what you're doing for Borderline Offensive, so we thought we have to show it. So, oh no, wait a minute, this is something else. I'll quickly go to the right one. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Jag heter Thiago Prata. Jag jobbar som projektledare för internationellt samarbete på Tilt. Matematiskt har vi fått ungefär 500 000 euro från Kreativ Europa finansieringsprogram för att jobba i ett 3,5 års projekt om humor, integration och konst. Projektet heter Borderline Offensive. Det är lite ironi i titeln i sig för att humor händer när logiken på vad man upplever avbrytas av en överraskande effekt eller kontrastverkan som får oss att ändra vårt omvärldstolkning. Och svart humor eller galghumor, det handlar om att se det lustiga i sin egen svåra situationer som sätt att hantera svårighet och behålla livsglädje. Vi hoppas åstadkomma en arbetssätt och en arbetsgrupp, en grupp av människor som nu har provat det och kan ta modellen vidare till andra arenor som är viktiga. Här ska vi jobba med integration, men det går att jobba med jämställdhet, historisk trauma, ekonomiska och andra samhällsfrågor.
Right, well, very well explained. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This picture is a famous picture from Sweden as well.
Yeah.
Who has seen this picture before? Well, not even everybody. So, do you want to explain what we see here and what it says about the situation in Sweden?
Well, Sweden, like other Central North European countries, there's or for some years, a rise in extreme right movements seeping into the mainstream public discourse and politics. And extreme right groups feel comfortable in sometimes manifesting or presenting their ideas in the public space. And what we see here is a act of defiance on location. There's I guess, a neo-Nazi march going on, and someone decides to overcome their fear of, potential violence or potential being made a pariah and stepping up and saying, I don't agree. I stand against you.
Did this picture have a big impact in Sweden? Because it's very iconic.
Yeah, and there's actually an even nicer one that became a statue about an old lady that is hitting the neo-Nazis with her bag.
It's from the 80s, isn't it?
Yeah. So we have a proud history of...
You have a proud history of Nazis and beating them.
Yes.
Yes. And for Borderline Offensive, you have made recently your work, I don't know if it's strictly connected to Borderline Offensive, it's called Little Sweden. Can you tell us something about Little Sweden?
It's not connected to our project. It was an independent artwork by a Swedish artist. And what happened was, in the year 2000, there was, I think there still is, this World Expo exhibition, which
I visit a contemporary art place called Ballet de Tokyo, and was culturally or artistically shocked because the contemporary art scene here or in the West or in Europe and in Syria, how it was before, there was a huge gap. So I didn't get it at the beginning. And that's the moment when I decided to continue my study. I came to Denmark. I did my first master in social political art. Then I moved to Frankfurt and Städelschule. I studied and another master, and I was focusing in site-specific art.
This is the best way somebody has delivered the resume in such a fast way.
Yeah, I mean,
so
as
many
much
countries, you have
as
done
you
it
can
before.
imagine, I was so much in the stage, so
Yeah.
I can you sharpening it with time, you know, like you make it.
Now you live in
more-
Berlin.
Now I live in Berlin,
And,
so I moved to Berlin 2 years ago.
Yeah. And you are working on a project to connect artists from Syria,
Yeah.
from all over the world who are in diaspora, so to say. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, I mean, beside my artistic practice as an artist, because I do a lot of art projects, which I love so much, but because of the situation in Syria after 2011, what's so-called refugee crisis, I called it Europe crisis. Because of the displacement of the artists, we kind of start losing the track of ourselves and our cultural scene. While the whole world kind of was focusing on the tangible heritage and Palmyra and everything, they were forgetting, or sometimes, I mean, with the whole discourse about the refugee, forgetting to focus on the artists themselves or the cultural, because that's the heritage of the future, right? The tangible heritage of the future. So anyway, to kind of way of keeping our cultural identity, because also another reason our production as a Syrian artist is melting within the new society where it exists. Like my production considered German, even if I'm not German. So as a way of keeping it one place, we decided to make an online platform. It's called Syria Cultural Index. It functions as a something between LinkedIn and Behance. It's not this, not that, but we allow artists from all over the world, Syrian artists in this case, and cultural producers, individual and institution, to create their own profile and to have their own solo presentation.
Is there a big need for it? Do you get a lot of reaction?
There is, yeah. I mean, to be honest, yes. We just also get funded around 500,000 to start the platform, which will cost much more, because the idea we're gonna start with indexing the Syrian cultural scene, and then we want to go beyond to all the conflict zone in the MENA region, in the Middle East and North Africa, and then we want to open it worldwide. So it will be a network for artists and cultural producer, but from different perspective than what exists now.
Yeah. The Borderline Offensive is also about humor and satire, using it against the world as it is. Is there, at this moment in Syria, would there be any place for humor or satire? Or is the situation so dreary and so bad that there's no more place for things that make you laugh?
Yeah, I mean, we had this discussion earlier today. I think at the moment we were playing this game. I never played it before, the Dutch game with the hat cup on and cup off. When you have discussion, and there was something statement about like a refugee, if we can make fun of the refugee crisis or not. And I said not. And my point is very simple. I think, I mean, if you are maybe not Syrian, you won't feel it. But for us, it's very vivid, right? Like just in the last week, 500 people get killed in Ghouta in like more than 1 week, right? And most of them children. So you don't really have a space to laugh about it, you know, because we are not getting arrested, just one slap after another, like since 7 years. Really, I mean, I don't know if you are following. Or
so if there's no good news, there's nothing to laugh about, not even as...
No, I think like, which is really funny, because as like we as Syrian, we like to crack jokes and make fun, and to tell jokes, it's very much big part of our culture. But since the refugee crisis, I heard only one joke about
Can you tell
refugees.
us?
No, it's really not good.
Oh.
And also, yeah, I mean, it's not that good, but it doesn't make sense to translate it from Arabic to English, because it's very specific type.
I thought maybe you had told it as many times as your resume, and you would just go, but no, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thanks very much
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
coming.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for hanging
everyone.
around. Give them a big hand. And we go over to Mattea. You can find your place again. And Mattea, you're there. Who do you have with you there?
I have here Anke Kouwmans. She's the head of the research department, Image in Context from the Minerva Art Academy. Welcome. You also have a doctorate in artistic strategies and a special interest in humor. And for all these reasons, we thought you're a great guest to ask a video fragment of how humor works according to you. What did you bring? You can speak in a microphone.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is that if there is any escape, there is humor. And if there's no escape possible, there's no humor. So I was a bit shocked by hearing, well, it's normal that there is no humor in Syria at this moment. It means that there's no escape. The fragment I want to show you is a fragment from Charlie Chaplin, the great dictator. And it's a fragment in which he performs like he is Hitler. He calls himself Hinkel. And Charlie Chaplin himself, he said, it's in a fragment from 1939. Would he have known what had happened in the Second World War, he wouldn't have made this movie. So it means that if the situation is that terrible, there is no humor left. Well, I just wanted to add something about that. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I'm studying humor from the perspective of psychoanalysis. And that sounds huge, but I think psychoanalysis is already very much integrated in our lives. And if you look at humor from the perspective of psychoanalysis, then you have to say that being part of a civilization means that you obey the rules. We're all obeying rules. And to obey rules means that you know how to behave. It was funny that you said there are not that much rules here, so there will not be that much humor, because humor means that you don't obey the rules. And by not obeying the rules, you make visible what are the rules. Dus the more strict the rules are, the more you have to put energy in obeying them. And humor means, for example, when you see a child who does not know how to behave, you have to laugh, because you can identify yourself with somebody who does not know how to behave. So rules are, in one sense, they are part of us. They are part of civilization, but you also have rules which come from the outside, from totalitarian regimes. Maybe you can't call them rules, maybe you call that a regime you can't escape of. And the fragment I like to show is a fragment in which Charlie Chaplin, as I said, he performs Hinkel, which is Hitler. And what he does is, in fact, showing the rules or the rhetoric of a totalitarian speech. And he does that by letting out the content and just showing how such a speech is performed. And he did this in 1939.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's
Go
have a
have a look. Maybe everybody has seen it, but it's great movie history.
Der Wiener Schnitzel in der Lage werden und das Sauerkraut. Hey, der Piloten sagt der Piloten. Und Rumänia wie sein Strap. Und der Blitzen sagt der Klutz. Hey, ich bleib noch straff mit der... Ballone bei seinem Stritz mit seinen Eltern sagt der Jugend. Ein der Straff mit seiner Klatsch. Hey, der Strapz mit sich Gedenken da, in seiner Tratsch mit Gedenken, meiner Täter wieder straffen, die straffen, sie straffen.
Wow. Still a very striking fragment. You wanted to add something, right, after the video?
Well, there are many things to add. If you can laugh about somebody like Hitler, you make him ridiculous, and at this moment you see that it's just rhetoric, and it's rhetoric that can be performed also by somebody like Charlie Chaplin. So you make him less powerful and less strong.
Is there an example of an artist nowadays in the Netherlands that you can name who breaks the rules in an interesting way?
And who shows the rules and who shows how hypocrisy works. Hypocrisy is pretending that there are rules, but they don't count for yourself. And I would say Tinkerbell, yes. There you are.
There she is. Thank you, Anke.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Give her a
thanks,
big
Anke.
applause.
Anke gave her hand. And for the people back home, that didn't see it, on the front row, they got handed earbuds, earplugs, because on stage here we have Black Box Red and Eva. You two are a loud band, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. I have earplugs myself.
Right, there you go. So if you got them, please put them in. But we're not gonna not show loud music on this show just because it's too loud. Because we always say if it's too loud, you're too old. Eva, you are making a new album, is that right?
Yeah, it's true. Well, we already recorded, but it will be released in September.
And do you already know in what order the tracks are? Because it's always something to decide.
Yes, it is. And you've actually helped pick the first track.
Yeah, I've actually said I've heard the album. It's great. I think you should all stream it and just put it on Spotify repeat during the night so that they get their 25 cents. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand to Black Box Red.
Salt in my eyes, salt in my eyes, salt in my eyes, salt in my eyes. There is no light, there is no light, there is no light, there is no light. There is no light, there is no light, there is no light, there is no light. Salt in my eyes. Salt in my eyes, salt in my eyes, salt in my eyes. There is no light, there is no light, there is no light, there is no light. Is this the light we hold? Did we forget to run for gold? Is this the light we hold? Did we forget to run for gold? Be with the blind, be with the blind, be with the blind, be with the blind. There is no sight, there is no sight, there is no sight, there is no sight. Be with the blind, be with the blind, be with the blind, be with the blind. Live through your lies, live through your lies, live through your lies, live through your lies. Is this the light we hold? Did we forget to run for gold? Is this the light we hold? Did we forget to run for gold? Is this the light we hold? Did we forget to run for gold? Is this the light we hold? Did we forget to run for gold?
Black Box Red. And they'll be back after, so you'll be able to hear more of them. And we've been joined in the meantime, also give a big hand for by Lola Joksimovic. Did I say that right?
You said it quite right, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, thanks. Welcome. You are from a group or organization or collective in Serbia. Can you tell us something about your organization? Because I know you started basically right away after the somewhat peace in former Yugoslavia, 1995. What is your group and why were you grounded? Why are you here in the world?
So there are more than one question there hidden.
Yes.
Okay, so the organization's name is Center for Cultural Decontamination, which sounds sexy, which it is actually at the end. So the motto of the organization is TZKD, which is the acronym of the organization, is a place where people come to feel free. So the position of the organization for 23 years now, it's been very proactive in a political field, but using culture and art as a medium. It's also bringing the politicization, in culture and art, and using informal education as well as one of the tools that bring out the critical thinking of the public. So to put it short, like Khaled does, So we are very much, in the eye of the political mainstream, and therefore we are not very well, accepted by the current political mainstream. So there is a lot of fight in it, and a lot of activism and also artivism in our work. And TZKD is also part of the consortium of the partnership within the Borderline project. And Tiago, that you already saw, the charming, pretending to be a Swedish man, but actually, a charming Portuguese man, is a partner in the project, but he is the mother of the project, and I'm the father of it. So
right, okay.
We have conceived it.
Yes, very well. I wish I
biblically.
I wish I was there at the moment when it happened. A part of the refugee crisis took part on the so-called Balkan route. I think loads of refugees went through Serbia as well. What was the and whilst we were dealing here with people who were saying there's no place for them, we shouldn't let them in, why do these people get houses? So we were one of the countries that people ended up in. Serbia was one of the countries
that's nothing,
they traveled through. What kind of impact did the refugee crisis have on the political or societal climate in Serbia?
Well, in Serbia, we get the chance actually, after the 90s and the war that we had in our countries, and atrocities that happened, that everybody knows by now, we had the chance, to show our nice face, and to be, nice people that actually, accept the refugees and treat them well and so on. But, to be meanie in the story, it's because, we knew that they don't want to stay in Serbia. They want to go, further, in the European Union, because, we are in Europe, but still not in European Union, Serbia. And the Balkan route was actually, a political statement, and as well as a symbolical picture of the situation itself. But I must also say that 2 years ago, and this is a prediction that I'm giving you, I don't have my ball here, but let's pretend that I do. A Dutch ambassador in Serbia actually said that Serbia will become some kind of parking lot for refugees. So in the future, there will be more situation for Serbia to show its pretty face. Or, the nasty one that we have seen previously.
Yeah, and you said you're not very popular in the political climate as it is now in Serbia. So what is the nasty face of Serb politics nowadays?
Oh, to be honest, Serbia is not really exceptional in that sense. That's the mainstream political face everywhere. You have it here, we have it back there in Balkan and so on. So the corruption, the plutocracy, the nepotism, so the crisis of the system itself, which is actually being transposed to the so-called migrant crisis that doesn't exist actually, So it is a crisis of the system itself that is showing the face and pointing to the other, the something, look at out there, so there is a problem over there, so there are these migrants coming out, to rape the white Europe or something like that, refugees.
So like everywhere in Europe, minorities or people who are weak are being scapegoated.
Yes, you
Yes.
can put it like that.
Yeah. We're going to have look at a small fragment. We don't have subtitles, so I had to cut.
Actually, I have a like
but-
a zillion of papers that
Yeah,
could
but-
be distributed for you to understand it. It will be in
But we're going to do-
Albanian and Serbian,
Yeah.
but just one short dialogue,
Yeah,
but
but
I will tell it about it
we go-
later, if you don't have it.
Yeah, I think we did it a little bit differently. So we're going to look at some snippets. Yeah?
Yeah.
Just some small snippets.
Yeah.
And then you can tell us about what this play was and what happened when you performed it. So I made cuts. I don't speak Serbo-Croatian. I don't speak Albanian. I made cuts, probably ridiculous ones. They don't know. You will know.
Yeah, I will cover I will cover the rest. Yeah, but it's self-explaining.
Njecienja vjet, presë shkruar libri i Dimitrije Tucovicit, Srbija dhe Shqipëria. Me trisht përmajndosh të disë. A gospodin Čosić, Dobrica Čosić, ka se mundja ose në shtatë të shtur, ta e vërsira gjatë pjesë, ta e leku të kuqë dhe përkja, për të nga e në skajshmërisht pagatik, ta ta janë fjale ta e grundër qushin o nekë për fizikri, këto kafsh dhe era të fytyrë njeriu, konstitën për festa për një të zirë nisit pa i tikur se qa është kripa, ku se për shëqerin në dojtë se është të bo.
Right. Applause, I think.
I asked, a Siko, a colleague of mine, if there will be a problem with seeing a penis, especially
problem.
the Serbian penis,
No problem.
on a Dutch television, but obviously no.
Yeah, if anybody wants to show its penis, it's this moment.
Now it's time.
Now it's the time. Oh, look, they're pointing at this guy here. Well, just say when. So tell us something about this play.
So I have chosen especially this one because always the relation with Serbia and with Kosovo is always the hot topic.
I quickly explain. Kosovo used to be part of Serbia. Now it's like somewhat an independent state, but the Serbians still think that a lot of their heritage is in the area, which is now Kosovo, which is basically an Albanian state with a Serb minority.
You're very well informed.
Yes.
You have done it like Khaled. I can't do it. I'm too baroque for this. But okay, it can be playing like this. But the bottom line is the Encyclopedia of the Alive, which is the title of this play, was played in TZKD. This is our venue. And it's collaboration between the Kosovo Chandra Multimedia Studio, organization from Kosovo, and from our organization. It was shared Albanian and Kosovar and Serbian actors and singers and a lot of music over there, something like that. You have a few publications over there. Whoever comes first can fetch it.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is, you have to have this burden of a relationship between Kosovars and Serbians. And this is really important, symbolic, but also very political and very, what is the political reality, of our society. So this theater show actually is showing it. But this specific thing is the tango between the Albanian guy and a Serbian guy. Serbian guy gets naked. And at some part of the show, so the Albanian guy remains in his knickers. So there is a question. So you take off your knickers because show us your Albanian dick. Then he goes, no, I can't. I have like sisters in the audience. I can't. Get naked. You know me. Then they say, but you're a young Albanian actor. You have to go for it, and so on and so on. So it, but retelling it, it's not that funny. So go and try to search for the publication to actually discover.
What was the reaction on this play?
No, actually, there is a strange thing that with culture is always easy because culture and art always transcend the borders. So even during the worst relationships, let's say with Albania, with Croatia, with Bosnia, whatever, during the nights and everything, the borders were transcended by arts and culture. So, borders are the constructs, they only exist, on some, formal level, but actually, in the minds and hearts of people, they don't exist at all.
Okay, and the last question, what's the best way to irritate Serbian people?
Well, telling them that they have small penises.
Right, okay. Anybody from Serbia here who's a man? No, no. Well, only big dicks in the audience. Right, okay. Lola, thank you very much.
Thank
Applause.
you for inviting us.
Yes, don't forget your wine. Cheers. Na zdrowie. We go to Mattea.
I have Sikko Kleveringa here. He is the project coordinator of Borderline Offensive in the Netherlands. In Friesland, welcome.
More
It's an
specifically.
exciting project.
Very exciting. We're really proud to be part of it.
Yeah, and it will take for 4 years, and already this year you will get started with all the intercultural exchanges, and there will be artist in residence projects starting.
Yeah,
this-
in 5 European countries. So here, actually, there are 12 partners from different European countries and also from the Middle East. And but there are 5 locations in Europe where 20 artists, so in every location 4, will prototype humor, artistic interventions. And later on, the best ones will be further developed and will go on tour.
It's a huge experiment.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's really very experimental. Yeah.
And this is an exciting moment because you will announce 3 winners, right? I think the first winner is the host artist, who will invite 2 artists from other countries to the Netherlands.
3, yeah.
3.
So, for Friesland, the host organization will be Grendel Games.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
They are here? They are here?
No, I
No?
don't think so. No.
Maybe everybody can wave?
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
One
And that
other announcement is in the audience, but
and that will be in June, right?
it will be in June, second half of June probably. And today we selected 3 artists from Syria, Bulgaria, and Slovakia. I won't repeat their names because you don't know them yet, but in June you will get to know them. And they will come over here to work 10 days with Grendel Games. They will prototype serious games about polarization and how to deregulate it. And the artist here will organize a game jam. And in this game jam, a lot of other creative people here from Leeuwarden can participate and also make prototypes.
Only
of this
from
kind.
Leeuwarden?
You're from Amsterdam, eh? Perhaps we make an exception.
All right. Okay, then the second winner.
Yeah,
is-
so there are also some Frisian and the Dutch artists going abroad. And one of them is Frisian, but I start with the Rotterdam guy. So we selected, in fact, the other countries which are present here selected artists from their choice. And it will be Sietske Schalk. It's a game designer from Rotterdam.
Applaus, Sietske.
Yeah.
And he will go to?
He will go to Slovakia.
Okay, guys.
And then the third winner.
Yes, speak.
Yeah. Then the Frisian winner is Zen Roorda.
Zen
which is
Roorda,
really-
where are you?
And he presents the Illustre Figuren. And he will go to Serbia. So he will
right.
go to Lola.
Right.
So
Have you already said hi to Lola?
No, I just arrived.
And,
so I'm
yeah.
ready.
So, but take care for your penis.
Yes.
Okay, give them all a big applause and fantastic that you could come.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, good.
Dankjewel, Sikko.
Right. Yeah, that's great. This is all part, of course, also for the people who are watching back home in their cozy, warm homes. This is also part of what happened today, the Borderline Offensive gathering here in Leeuwarden because of European Capital of Culture and all these people meeting each other and now going to meet each other again and work with each other. And I have been secretly joined by, please grab a mic, and Tinkerbell, grab a mic if you want to say something. I have to see if I pronounce this right. Junaid Sariadin. Yeah, it's good. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome. You are from Beirut.
Yeah, so I'm based in Beirut. I'm a member of a theater company called Zukak Theater Company.
Right.
I'm originally from the mountains of Lebanon.
Right.
But as a company, we are based in Beirut,
Right.
Lebanon. Yeah.
We have we're going to show a small bit of a trailer of your work from last year, so we kind of get an impression what you're doing, and then we'll talk further.
Warning. Use only under competent supervision. لا الاستخدام تحت المراقبة المسؤولة.
شو يعني المسؤولة؟
حيوان ساكن
Right. We could watch this forever, but I rather also talk to you. So, you are from Lebanon, and so for somebody who follows the news, everybody knows it is a country that's so divided by sectarianism. There's Christians, there's Shiites, there's Druze, there's Sunnis. There's different factions and different coalitions between Christians and Shiites, or Christians and Sunnis, or a big problem with militias and militarization of political parties. Khaled from Syria said there's no place for humor in a place like Syria. How is it to work as an artist in a country where everything is divided by ethnicity, group, faith, political alliance? How can you be autonomous and be above the parties as an artist?
Yeah. It's like one day you look at it and you see it from a positive point of view, and the other day you see it as a destructive forces surrounding you. It's a great place to really practice diversity in that extreme sense, but at the same time it's really difficult because it's you live in a cycles of destruction in a way. So, and history always repeats itself in that sense. So you find a moment yourself that if you plan a project, you might not finish it or achieve anything in it, but at the same time, you have no other chance but just doing what you want at one and what you plan to do. So it's a great place. It's very vivid. It's very alive. It's very diverse, especially Beirut. Beirut is a very mixed place with a lot of young people because most of the universities, public institutions, and big companies are based in Beirut. So it's an interesting city, full of life, and culturally it's very interesting to be in.
Yeah, and it's a well-known secret that people from Beirut are the roughest party crowd in the world, aren't they?
Yeah, also it is like if you look through the war period in Lebanon, especially the civil war that exploded in 1975 and ended in 1991. It is during the war period you have like all theaters, cinemas stayed open. Theater companies, artists were so active during the war. Also, extreme parties like drugs, alcohol, everywhere. Money, a lot of money during the wars. But after the war finished, everything stopped in a way. Like people just went down. It was the shock of the end of what you were fighting for, and the fakeness of all ideologies that people were fighting for. And at the end, there were a compromise, and they solved the whole issue with an amnesty law that erased the right of re-questioning or knowing what happened really.
So what is your role as a theater company then? Do you still address those issues?
So for us as a generation, we were raised during the 90s after the finish of the war. We were born during the war. And for us, this gap in the 90s of the end of the war is made us responsible of re-questioning the whole history. So our role but our place as artists and individuals is to re-question narratives, what can build stories again, and what can question history at the same time, and memory as a sense of narration.
Right. We're going to have a quick look at another work of an artist in Lebanon. Maybe you know it, and work in the public space. And what we see here is that rooftops in the city of Tripoli are painted, and for who can read Arabic can read the word. What does the word say? There it goes. It's complete. Salam, somebody said.
So it's peace.
It's peace, right. This is an artwork where... so is this something that is typical of what you said, your generation, that are re-questioning, rethinking, and are retaking responsibility in filling the gap that has fallen into cultural life after?
For me and for us in the company, peace is a problematic issue in itself, because peace is amnesty for us, and amnesty doesn't equal justice.
It sounds like a contradiction that because of this amnesty you're not allowed to ask questions,
Yeah.
but for peace you need to ask questions.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. Amnesty doesn't mean justice. And I think to build history and to build societies, you need to base on justice and not on amnesty of like just giving up or forgiving for the sake of forgiving, because there is in Lebanon 17,000 missing person, their parents, their families, their mothers, don't have the right. Where are the corpses? Okay, they spent 15 years fighting just to know about their missing. Where are they? And at the end, okay, they said, okay, I give up. I will say that my missing beloved is dead, but I want at least to bury his corpse or her corpse. So this is the right. This is justice. It's just the right to know.
So that's for you your role as an artist, to ask questions that actually cannot be asked to get justice in a system where...
I think my role as an artist is much more smaller because we cannot pretend as artists to solve these issues.
I guess you can.
But no, solving it, no, we can't. Otherwise, we could have solved it like long time ago. But I think, and also all the systems like politicians, like all systems in the universe can't solve alone these issues. But I think our role is to re-question and to reflect on certain matters. And for me, not to achieve justice, but to try to build several narratives that can re-question what happened.
And do you get answers?
I don't think that we can get answers for ourselves because we are not scientists, but we can provoke answers with the audience, and because, art is not about giving answers, but it's about raising questions. And I think we, as artists, can do really very small, minor changes, which is great already, which is so pretentious. Like when we say that art doesn't change the world, but art really affect and do minor changes. It means this is great,
right?
because if you change in the mentality of one person, then you can change the world as well.
Exactly. So that's
like
a snowball
one person
effect.
can change.
We're going to talk about to Tinkerbell about it later because he's so
It's like the building you have in here in Leeuwarden. It's like, you know, the.
It's about he's talking about the Oldhoven.
Like
now,
if it starts with 1 millimeter difference in dimension, then the whole construction will fall down.
Thank you very much. We're going to talk about the role of art and the impact it has with Tinkerbell a little bit later. Thank you very much. Back to the music. Another song by Black Box Red. And for the camera guys, it would be nice if you film the band that the audience can still see the band as well. Thank you very much. A little bit regie from my side. Black Box Red.
Until I cannot be, until I cannot be, my greatest God I pray. Until I cannot be, I've sinned without a prayer. We never knew, we never knew, we never knew, but we used to. We never knew, we never knew, we never knew. We never knew, we never knew, we never knew, but we used to. We never knew, we never knew, we never knew. And now she's dying. Look at me, I'm your trouble. 366 swallow. Look at me, I'm your trouble. 366 swallow. Look at me, I'm your trouble. 366 swallow. Look at me, I am your trouble. 366 swallow. We never knew, we never knew, we never knew, but we used to. We never knew, we never knew, we never knew. We never knew, we never knew, we never knew. We used to. We never knew, we never knew, we never knew. And now she's dying. Look at me, I am your trouble. 366 swallow. Look at me, I am your trouble. 366 swallow. Look at me, I am your trouble. 366 swallow. Look at me, I am your trouble. 366 swallow. And now she's dying, and now she's dying, and now she's dying, and now she's dying.
Woo! Black Box Red. And they'll be back one more time. So hang on to your plugs, old people. I'm joined here by Margarita.
Hello.
And Margarita, I forgot to write down your last name.
Dorovska.
Dorovska.
Yeah.
Margarita Dorovska, you are from Bulgaria and you are the director of which must be one of the greatest museums in the world. Can you please tell us some more?
Absolutely. The Museum of Humor and Satire, the Research Museum, and it's in Gabrovo, Bulgaria.
Right, okay, so that's the Museum for Humor and Satire. So, does that mean that the whole day in your museum, you as a staff are sitting there going,
Laughing all day long, yeah.
So, because when I read it, I thought the Museum for Humor and Satire, is that a joke? That was my first thought.
No, it's for real. I'm the director.
Right,
Imagine.
okay, so how did you manage it? What is your mission as a museum?
Well, our mission is really to highlight the role of humor and to Gabrovo, the place where the museum is considered Bulgarian capital of humor. So supposedly these are the people who have the most fun, and to bring humor into everyday life. And you need to develop attitude towards humor, good humor.
Right.
And so that's something that requires education, and that requires. There is a lot of self-irony in what we do and what we present.
Right.
So that's very strong perspective towards the world.
Yeah. We're gonna. You chose 2 fragments.
Yeah.
That want to show. We're gonna show the first fragment of an artwork in Bulgaria, and we have a little movie of it.
Ние сме Destructive Creation, анонимна група от артисти. Това, което правим е социално изкуство, намесено в градска среда, най-често с послание, свързано с някакви наболели теми и проблеми, които често се избягват от общественото внимание. Работите, с които участваме на 23-то биенале в Габрово, дома на хумора и сатирата, са Крак с времето, с преобразяването на съветските войници в американски комикс герой и преобразяването на лъва пред съдебната палата като клоун с заглавия в 20 години цирк. С тези работи получаваме награда Златен езоп и първо място за съвременно изкуство на 23-то биенале.
Right, you have, of course, in Bulgaria, as in many countries that were under communism, still a lot of Soviet monuments left, and they turned in the soldiers into superheroes from Marvel. What is it that you liked so much about this artwork?
It was a unanimous decision taken by the jury, which was very mixed. Bulgarian international members, foreign members, and we were all like completely confident that that's where the first prize has to go.
Why?
Well, it's visually strong work, very strong comment. The Soviet army from the symbol for the time before 89, and now the new heroes. And somehow this work was probably one of the strongest artistic comments that came up in the last 20 years. And it was also internationally very well covered by the media. It created a huge impact in Bulgaria, and there are still strong, pro-Russian interests and clubs who defended the
So they thought it was was a defamation of their beloved heroes.
Yes.
So that's where the controversy comes in.
Yeah.
Right, and.
You know what happened? They cleaned the monument during night because people really liked the work, so they sneaked in during the night to clean it.
Would you consider them cleaning it in the night also something for the Museum of Humor and Satire?
Absolutely, that's very subversive to clean the monument.
Yeah, because that's why I'm interested in because you have this Museum for Humor and Satire. I've looked at the web, and I. Google searched contemporary Italian fascist jokes, and there are contemporary Italian fascist jokes. Do you also host practical jokes of Italian fascists?
Well, we are really basically there are always strong voices in humor and weak voices in humor, and we are right now hosting one exhibition that's Trump 9 months later. And the guy who curated the exhibition, like a really strong, interesting cartoonist, American cartoonist, he was saying, you know, when Trump came into power, so many newspapers asked us about pro-Trump cartoons. And because there are very few, basically there are no cartoonists making pro-Trump cartoons, so we started selling them cartoons about the weather and, you know, like everyday comments. So.
Now, my question actually is, do you draw a political line in which jokes are acceptable for your museum or not? So so it's not only curation on artistic merit, but also what they want to say, maybe politically or as a societal comment.
Well, basically, in terms of being an institution, yes, you have to observe certain level of political correctness. That's, you know, that ends up being non-negotiable. But as a museum of humor, throughout the years, we've been quite lucky to be able to overstep the line.
But we just heard that for humor you need to cross borders.
Yeah.
So, but you just mentioned a border.
Well, you know,
you don't
borders are there to be crossed. The thing is that you need to...
But do you do that as a museum?
Well, we do it as a museum. We do it as a museum, like... for so many years, basically, the borders have been so strictly outlined, you know, we have not been able to dare to cross them. I think we are starting to go there.
And what kind of borders are we talking about then?
What kind of borders?
Well, yeah. What's a taboo for instance? What's a taboo now in Bulgaria that you can't make jokes of?
Okay, Bulgaria right now is in, you know, the world classification for freedom of speech and expression is in place 109. What do you think? How did this sound for a European country?
Doesn't really sound good.
Yeah.
Because there's, I think, about 170 countries. So
yeah.
You're not playing Premier League.
Absolutely.
So what does it mean? What can't you do in Bulgaria?
Well, I don't think you can't really do it, but the question is how visible you can be about doing it. First, whether you dare do it, and if you dare do it, what will happen? And very often, you know, people just don't dare, because for 45 years, people have been under a regime where they had very clearly outlined what could be done and what can't be done. So, you know, if people are very well disciplined, they somehow don't think that they can do certain things.
So is this so mentally there's still some iron curtain?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's very interesting. We're going to look at one more movie that you brought, which I found a hilarious idea. I wish we would have done it here. So we see here the brown traffic signs that are used everywhere in Europe to point out touristic, what do you call it, landmarks or touristic destinations. What can you tell us about this work?
This work is again a work by Destructive Creation, the same anonymous group. It took place in Thessaloniki. So they put up there that sign which designates a historic moment. Not a historic place, but a historic moment. So it's like, you know, a warning sign. We are here for tourism. Every day's life is going on. But, you know, there is something really important happening right now, very close.
Yeah. Is this something, do you think, that nowadays, as an artist, you should work in the public discourse that is owned by politics, media, social media. Is this the place where artists with humor and satire should work instead
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, especially for places like Bulgaria, I think that's very, very important when you have still this very strong sense about public space, like public monuments, and where art institutions are still a bit secluded, elite, considered like not not popular places. So basically, what you can do as an artist is to go outside where the people are.
Right. Okay. Well, we hope to see more of you, and I'd love to go to your museum one time. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Applause. Please be seated a little bit, because one more song by Black Box Red, and then we're gonna talk to Tinkerbell. Black Box Red.
Perish shall we are, the nothing we become. With first sight of mine, what have we become?
Fucking goed. Black Box Red, thank you very much. Love it. Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
We've heard people from Beirut, from Serbia, from Bulgaria, very nice Portuguese guys from Sweden, all doing art or working with art in a public discourse, something which is a speciality of you as well. what was your impression of the artist and the people that we spoke to?
Oh, I wanted to hear way more. It's far too short, so I want to talk like for hours with every one of them. That's actually my impression.
Yeah, but a couple of times you asked, but why didn't you cross the border, or why didn't you do that, or so? Do you think, especially here in the last, my impression was that you thought maybe you should go further than you do?
Well, what Anke Kouwmans just said is that you need some kind of border to cross to get humor, right? And when a director of a museum of humor tells you that there are borders that they cannot cross, then there's a contradiction. So that's why I asked the question.
You yourself are basically quite good in crossing borders. They be legally, they be internationally, they be for this very hard thing to pinpoint what was like good taste. You've used that.
Thanks.
Yes, yes. It's it's actually it is a compliment. You've used animals that are dead for, like, you made a handbag out of a cat. You sterilized yourself because you were overpopulation was a theme for you. You've been 5 hours in jail after you made an artwork about young chickens, male chickens, what do you call it, chicklets, that you auctioned off at an art fair, and you said the ones that don't get auctioned off, I'll put them in a shredder, as is happening in the bio industry. Then they quickly bought all these chicklets because you threatened to throw them against the wall. But afterwards you got arrested by the police. You go into...
They still killed them.
They still killed them afterwards. You go with a... we'll talk about it a little bit later because we have a movie. You went to Afghanistan to look for somebody who got deported. It looks like you put everything on the line for your artwork. Why is it that you do that?
Well, you know, every artist, doesn't matter which medium you work in, is a storyteller, right? It doesn't matter if you're a musician or an actor or a painter or a photographer, whatever. Every artist tells a story. And I think as a professional artist, you always look for the best way to tell the story. And that's just what I do. That's it.
Yeah, but this storytelling does set you apart. You were called the most controversial artist. But is it so does it mean it is not controversial for you, what you do?
Not at all.
Do you understand that some people might find it controversial?
Yeah, well, I think controversial is... I know that's a term that people use, but I think it's a wrong term.
What is the right one?
It's just reality. That's the only thing I do. What I do is I look for the errors within our norm. So in the things we do every day, I look for tiny parts that are actually really weird when you look at it from a close. And I enlarge them, put them in another context, and then people are really offended or whatever. But it's just what you do every day. That's it. So when you're offended, then you're actually offended by the things you do yourself. I don't know.
So you're sort of, are you, so we concluded when we spoke first, you have a very good talent for finding the sore spot. Are you basically enlarging the sore spot, stuffing in people's faces, and if they are uncomfortable, it's more them realizing that they are letting it happen than actually you enlarging it?
Yeah, well, when I show you a piece of reality, your reality, and it's really bad, then you can do a lot of things. And one of these things is being mad at me because I tell you that you're doing a really weird thing. Or laugh at it and call it humor. It's not humor. I'm really damn serious about everything I do. Or take it serious and change your life. But most people don't want to change anything.
And by change, you talked about the snowball effect. Somebody has to start and do it. You spoke to the people from Beirut about it. Do you believe in, as an artist, starting a snowball which might change something?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very sure that the artist in general is in potential the most powerful person in the world, because everyone with some kind of power is inspired by art, any art. that means that when you're the inspiration as an artist, then actually you are in power. You can change the world.
So what have you changed?
Many things.
Give us
But-
the one you're most proud of.
I don't know. I don't know, because the thing with a snowball effect is that you cannot measure it. I mean, I know about 15 years ago, I killed my cat and I made a purse out of it. And many people all around the globe got really, really mad. We all know that. But what also happened is that I got letters from all around the globe from people they became a vegetarian. And only a few emailed me about that. But when 10 people email you, you can be sure that at least 100 people became a vegetarian, and they might have told their friends and they became a vegetarian as well, etc., etc. So that's a snowball effect, and you cannot measure it because you don't know.
Right. Yeah, it's true. This cat thing does haunt you, because if you search you on YouTube, the second or third movie is "This is the cat killer lady" interview. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also, for example, most people, I'm sure, is there anyone here who knows about the phosphate issue or phosphate problem? See, that no one knows. I think it's the largest problem in the world we're facing in the next 10 years. And it actually means that within 100 years, we can only feed like 3 billion people. And then we are with 11 billion people. That's a very big problem.
Is this your next project that you're
No,
going to do?
I did it actually already 4.5 years ago. It wasn't an issue in any country on the political agenda, and I made it an issue in the political agenda.
Right.
First in the Netherlands and already in Europe. They changed the law, and that's actually why I got sterilized. And you don't know, it's fine, because you don't have to make the law, but the lawmakers changed it.
Right.
So that it really worked.
Good. This borderline offensive started because of the refugee crisis, if you could call it a crisis. Some people said here there's no refugee
It
crisis.
didn't start
there
yet.
was a political crisis. I'm don't shake your head. I'm correcting myself. You went to Calais. We're gonna have a look at that. This is something you shot yourself. Small fragment. So you shot this yourself. This was in Calais, France, the jungle, as it was called. Why did you go there?
Oh, it's just research. You know, most things that you read in the newspaper are just a tiny bit of the whole story. And when you want to change things, and when you need to understand how things work. So I try to travel to as many places as I can just to understand and to talk with people.
And what did you learn of it, or what did it mean for your work as an artist?
Well, I learned, for example, that you are right, there's no refugee crisis, but it's more, there's no refugee crisis yet. It didn't start yet. I didn't particularly learn that in Calais. I don't know exactly what I learned there. I just talked with a lot of people, so I learned about the reasons, about why stay in Calais, why not ask for asylum in France, for example. That was a very logical thing to ask for me. And then you learn about how the asylum procedures work in France, and it's almost impossible to ask for asylum. It takes over a year to even ask for it, and you have to wait sometimes years to get it. So people are in a hurry. They want to go somewhere and start a life.
Right.
So, yeah.
And another thing you did with, which was connected to refugees, was that you helped this girl look for her father who was deported.
Yes.
And this is like a vlog you made. It is in Dutch, but she'll tell you afterwards what they were talking about.
Hi. Oh nee, het is 1 uur. We zijn aan het filmen. Oh, hi. We zijn onderweg naar de Afghaanse ambassade. En we zijn net bij Adje Kuiken geweest. Ja. We praten over 1F. Jouw vader. Ja. En we gaan nu met de Afghaanse ambassade praten over wat we kunnen doen om eigenlijk het cv van Veda te bewijzen. Hij is namelijk helemaal nooit majoor geweest, zegt hij. En dat moeten we bewijzen. En we gaan de ambassade vragen om ons te helpen. Ja, we zijn een beetje uitgeput, want we zijn over de tram en waren verdwaald en zo. Den Haag is een doolhof.
En het regent.
En het regent, ja. Maar verder alles goed. Oh ja, jullie moeten ons helpen, want we hebben een crowdfundingsactie. Ja. Ja, dus ga maar even naar facebook.com/justiceforveda. Daar staat een link naar de crowdfundingsactie. We hebben heel veel geld nodig. En dat was het.
Ja. En dan gaan we naar de ambassade.
Doeg!
So tell us, inform us quickly, what was this about?
What is this about? Well, very long story. I tried to explain in 1 minute. In the year 2000, there became a legal document. It's called well, it doesn't matter what it's called. A legal document, and it said that everyone who worked for the Gaat and Waad, that's like the safety organization in Afghanistan during the communistic regime. This document says that everyone who had to work there is a war criminal because everyone had to show their loyalty to the government by killing and torturing people. The thing is that the Netherlands is the only country in the world that believes that this is true. And the people who got tortured also say it's not true. There were just a few people that did that, not 140,000 people like the Dutch government is saying. Well, because of this document, the Netherlands believes that there are about 800 people in the Netherlands, all people from Afghanistan who used to work there, are all war criminals. And I discovered that most of them are absolutely not guilty. And
So
I'm trying to prove that.
the father of this girl was
Yes,
deported?
the father of this girl is one of them, and he got deported to Kabul in Afghanistan. And after he was deported, he got missing. And of course, his family was really, really worried. So, and his daughter, who was only 23 years old by then, wanted to go on her own, and I decided to go with her.
Did you
And-
find him?
Yes.
And then you documenting this, going there, getting the media attention. Is this activism or is this an artwork?
Well, at that point for me, it was just that I called every news agency in the Netherlands and asked for a reporter to go with her because I just wanted someone to go with her, because going on your own to Afghanistan when you are 23 years old and you have no contacts is super dangerous. But no one wanted to send someone. So at first I was just like, okay, then I'll go. So that was the reason. And also because I always want to know what's going on here, because the news is not, the
Yeah, but
newspapers aren't telling me.
Was it activism or was it art?
No, it was just helping her. And I made a film about it. And
Was the film art?
well, maybe. Well, at least it was like the first of a series of 3 movies, and the second and the third I haven't made yet because I'm not finished with the project yet. Because I started a project in which I want to show, like in a manual, how you can, as an individual, solve any problem. So I just chose the most the hardest problem I could find, which is the problem of this man who is accused of war criminal activity, as a case to show that you can solve everything. But I didn't solve it yet. I'm still working on it.
Right. Last question for you. What is the next sore spot that we don't know yet that you are doing? What is the next sore spot that you're going to put your finger on?
There are so many. But I just wrote a book about the dangers of fear. It's going to be published next week. And because I think a lot of problems in the world are caused by fear of so many things. And it's hard to talk about the danger of fear, because when you, example, take fear for Islam, then you immediately start a discussion about Islam. What is Islam and why should you be scared about it or whatever? So that's a wrong case. So I went to Fukushima in Japan for 7 weeks because, well, it's a nice question to ask here. Is there anyone here who has an idea how many people died of radiation after the nuclear accident in Fukushima? Anyone? Big number? Big number. Anyone else? Too many. Well, the only right answer is 0 from the radiation, and no one got sick from the radiation. But a few hundreds died because they were so afraid of the radiation that they got so stressed that they died out of stress. So that's the danger of fear, and that's what I wrote a
and
book about.
published next week.
Yes.
Tinkerbell, thank you very much. Please give her a big hand. Thank you, audience. I have to say, tomorrow night here in the same place will be a meetup cafe, also organized by Epen Up Live. Please come and go and meet people who maybe came on the Balkan route and came here. And next week, you should all come, because next week we have a big party issue, because there's a polarized world, and we are going to use party as a to fight polarization. So there's going to be a klezmer band, there's going to be a Moroccan party band, there's going to be a happy hardcore band, there's going to be a Dutch carnival singer next week, next Wednesday. You can talk to our guests, they're going to stay here a little bit. Please hang on, the DJs will keep on playing. Please talk to the artist. Tinkerbell thanks, crew thanks, Mattea thanks, and we'll see you all next week. Bye bye, DJ.